Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Bald Explorer reading. Just waiting for the music to stop. You may have noticed that I am a bit louder than I should be, for one thing. I am... What's going on here? Let's turn all some of these... Twiddle the knobs on the apparatus. Just make sure that I am actually live today. I don't want to be doing that reading thing. I am all wrapped up because it's bloody cold in here today. It's bloody freezing. And I've only just stepped in here and I've got a little heater in here. But if I turn it on, it'll only be warm by the end of the hour. It's one of those oil heaters that takes about an hour to heat up. You plug it in and, you know, it does its thing. There we go. I've got to go and light the Essie shortly and try and warm myself up. I've had a funny day this afternoon trying to just put somebody onto the insurance. So when I go up and buy my van, I can get Mr. Suggett to drive my car back. But it turns out, instead of just going, oh, yeah, we'll add a driver for one day, you've got to go and get a quote and have all this, you know, we want to know his inside leg measurements, the circumference of his head, how many times he picks his nose, all of that. It's like, I haven't got all that information. I just want to put one person on to drive back. And now I'm also trying to get the insurance sorted so I can drive the van back, should I choose to buy it. Life's not easy, is it? These things, just... I said, you know, I haven't changed my insurance. This is the reason I haven't changed my car insurance, because you make it so difficult that nobody wants to jump through all those bloody hoops every day. Oh, we're going to do a CCCG check on you and make sure that you are who you say you are, and that, you know, if you've so much as blinked at a policeman in the past, then, you know, your rate of payment will go up. It's like... All right. Don't put the scares on me. Anyway, it looks slightly blue in the studio today. Is it me, or are the colours still a bit weird? Anyway, hello everybody. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, it does look. It looks blue and chilly, and actually the scarf. I shaved earlier. That's the trouble. I shaved, and my neck now is sensitive to the material that the scarf is made of. Anyway, we're doing a reading, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing a reading of the Sussex Peep Show by Walter Wilkinson, and we're on chapter 13. By the Aider to the Small Dole is what it's called. Hello to Turbo Stream, nice to see you. To lovely Julia, to Audrey Forbes, to John Morris, to the Welsh Wanderer, to Billabong O'Neill, lovely to see you. To Philip Hammond and Mary, good afternoon to you both. Ed, looking forward to Mary's exciting jumpers that she's going to be knitting to keep me warm in my little studio here. To Jamie Boy, to John F, to Ed Loud, I may have said that. To Anne H, good afternoon. It's been cold, mostly cloudy here in the Netherlands. Yeah, it's been a sort of on and off sun and then cloud and cold. I haven't had a chance to go out because I've edited the last of the canal videos. It's a slight epic. It's about 23 minutes. But it's nice. It's nice. Turbo Stream looks really chilly in Vobes Towers. Yeah, it is actually. Very cold out there. Holly and Co. Hello to you. Heidi ho, everybody. Heidi ho to you. Rant alert. No. No. Wrong show for a rant. And Lee Lawson says, hello, I found 2 or 3 old maps of this area. Just emailed one to you that is a Geographica Ramblers map. Footpaths and bus routes distinctly indicated. Have I got to go and have a look at my email account now just to see if I can see if that is that something that we can share on the show? Oh, here we are, Sussex footpaths. Have a look at these lovely fine images, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on a minute. Bing! Look at that. Number 6. Country round Worthing. Footpaths and bust routes. Not bust. Oh my God. Bus routes distinctly indicated. 1 and 6. How superb is that? Thank you so much. And here we go. Here's an old map of the area. There's Clapham. Oh, yes, looking up Angring Park, Wepham Down. Wait, this is bizarre, isn't it? Oh, yeah, he was... I'm just looking at that from where we read yesterday. He was in Findon, which is... I wonder if I can... yeah, can you see my mouse? I suppose you can see my mouse. He was in Findon. I don't know if you can actually see my mouse. I'm just looking on the action replay to see if my mouse suddenly moves across the screen. It may not. Of course, how would I know? If it doesn't show up on the screen... I think you have to actually tell it to see. Oh, there it is. Oh, it is on there. Okay. Oh, now you're going to watch me. Yes, of course, now you would have just watched me waiting. This is ridiculous. We haven't even started. I'm sorry about that. He was in Findon, wasn't he? And he came down here and he climbed up to High Salvington. And yes, and then he did go into Clapham Woods. So he must have come down here, down into Clapham, up to Highdown. Actually, it's very useful looking at those old maps. Thank you very much, Lee. Let's have a look at this one. Oh, that's a big, wider one. Oh, yeah, that's a much wider one. What did you... Oh, that's not what we want. What did you say in the email? I'm looking to see what old maps I found for the area. Can't see a date, 1930s. Look at that. Brilliant. I must get a copy at some point. Wonderful. That's my email. You don't want to know about that. Where are we? That's the show. That's... Anyway, right. So, we can see the map. Yes, thanks. I should have read that, shouldn't I? It was not the best of days for setting out from High Salvington, nor was the road the best of ways for the dreamy traveller. What with the drizzling rain, several miles of bungalows and villas, and a constantly rude, snorting traffic, the road through Tarring and Sompting failed to register the least charm. Sompting has a very old church with the pretty tower, it is true, and the downs hover above it, but the road was a bothersome riot for the pedestrian, a perturbation, which reached its climax when I was finally confronted with a large board pointing to Bungalow Town. That, perhaps, would have been the right direction in search of pennies, but, unfortunately, at the end of the road beyond the board, there was the sight of a glorious great hill, shining vision of loveliness and romance, and I was drawn away from the architectural enticements of bungalows. So he's obviously gone along the A27, what we call the A27 now. Where's your map? Where's your map, Lee? Where's your map? No, it's gone. I've lost it. Where's your map? Oh, it's the wrong side. It's gone that way. Never mind. Oh, sorry, you can't. No, I don't want to do that. That's what I was trying to show, but it's the wrong way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What a hill it was that rose above the broad green flats by the River Ada, a long green bank rising hugely to a high crest of yellow mustard. Below, the golden cap was a scarlet field, solid with poppies, and below that the pale purple ploughlands descending to a farm among the elms. The poppies, there's a poppy field just up there by Sompting Down, isn't there? And people go and take photographs of that quite regularly. I wonder if that's where he is, whether he's gone up past what used to be the Sompting Abbot pub, or I think it changed its name, didn't it, to the Greyhound or something, and it's now being turned into flats. A complete down, a patchwork in the brightest and most impossible colours, but rendered in the best of taste by those great artists, atmosphere and light. When the road turned the corner away from the Brighton direction, it was obviously the best of all possible ways. This was the desirable world of real life, the spacious country, the modest road with the wild roses in its hedges and plenty of room for a man to push his barrow and sing. Over the hill above the road, rising from the perfect elms, soared the tall buttresses of Lancing College Chapel. Oh yes, of course. Oh right, so he's It says he's gone past the Sussex pad. I'm trying to work out where he is. So, and in between the leaves gleamed a massive stone arch, a mullioned window or two, or a length of restful cloister. Old Shoreham Church stood out over the fields, and the Ada rising deceptively at the corner of the downs as if it was a quiet village. But round that corner lies all Bedlam, and all the way to Brighton. So he must have gone up to the... He must have gone, turned left. It looks like he's turning left at the Sussex pad. He doesn't actually go across the toll gate, the toll bridge. My road, and he seems to be very shy of actually earning any money, doesn't he, this chap? Actually, where the audiences are, such as Worthing, when he was looking down on Worthing, or Findon, when he was in Findon, he sort of just goes, no, I'm going back into the countryside where nobody is, and I'll pitch my tent for the sheep. My road followed up the valley of the Ada, an English road of many turns and grassy banks, roofed with large trees, so quiet that I watched a weasel for 5 minutes trying to locate, or else studying, his watcher. At Coombs it began to rain, but Coombs is a hospitable place, and when the genial farmer arrived with a carload of children he had brought home from school, he put me into a field just cleared off the hay. That's interesting. We've filmed at Coombs. It's lovely. Here was a farmer who definitely liked the country life. He'd been an engineer and had been offered a post as a temporary salary on the continent, but he had come to the conclusion that engineering was tiresome and dirty work. So now, here he was, with a bright complexion and blue eyes, farming these pleasant meadows beneath the hills. There is only the farmhouse at Coombs and a few attendant cottages, but further across the field, standing apart, like a hermit, is an ancient church, lending a strange distinction to the hamlet. Sorry, I just had to check something then. Had a text. It's usually something that says that something's not right with the show. But actually, it's all okay. It seems to be working very well. Yes, so he's gone up to there. I've made a video in that church. I made a couple of videos at that at Coombs Church. Very lovely church, very old church in actual fact. After the rain, the morning was ravishingly bright and clear, and the little green hill before the tent stood out from the blue sky with a startling clarity. A tent dweller is always being entertained in surprising ways, and this morning the cottage children were turned out into the meadow to play. They were bright, charming figures, running wild in the sun, pulling each other about in a truck, keeping up the incessant chatter all about nothing, but serving as a lively expression of their happiness. They were as amusing as lambs in their gambols, and as graceful as foals, pretty creatures with white dresses fluttering behind them as they ran, their fair curls flying to the wind. Lucky children not to be confined to a townhouse or a school, able to enjoy their abounding life, untrammelled by the conveniences of urban adults. It's interesting, isn't it? Because Coombs, very much up until this year when COVID was around, invite children into the church, into the farm, and all the lambing. And the lovely Julia and I have been up there and filmed some of the lambing, very fresh lambs being born, and kids were all around. I think they had to stop it last year as well for reasons I can't really remember. And then this year for obvious reasons. But they've always done that, and they've had tractor rides over the downs. So they've been a child-friendly farm for a long time, which is fantastic. They're brilliant at Coombs. The farmer was full of weather lore of the uncomfortable kind. Our shadows in the grass were hard and clear, and therefore it would rain. The cows were galloping about, twirling their tails. Therefore it would rain. Fine before 7, rain before 11. Therefore it would rain. The sun was too hot, too direct. Therefore it would rain. He had some hay almost ready for carrying, so therefore it would rain. A formidable set of prophecies which failed to produce one single drop of rain throughout an exceptionally hot and brilliant day. A bit like the shepherd that they met earlier. Do you remember, just above on Long Furlong, when they bumped into the shepherd who predicted rain and also seemed to have the error of the weather law. From Coombs to Stenning, the road begins by mounting a hill, which perches you over the valley of the Ada. Wait a minute, you're at Coombs and you're going to Stenning. The road is direct and it cuts across the hill, not over it. Depends which way. Unless he has no. We know that he has no compass in him and no sense of direction. So he must have gone up, because there's a big hill. If you go up above Coombs, there's a massive slope, because it's in the Coombe, obviously, and it goes right up. And then I guess he sort of trundled up up to look at Stenning Bowl, presumably. Lee Lawson says must be the Passmore family at Coombs. Yeah, maybe. That would be good, wouldn't it? 'Tis a shame, says Ed. Says it's a shame many old pubs have closed. Many were once great meeting places in the community. Strange how it seems to be so much room and welcome for all these expensive coffee shops. I'm not sure where that came from, but thank you for that, Ed. Michael White. Lee Lawson says you could have children's birthday parties in the barn at Coombe. It was great fun. We hired one year for our son's party. Ah, yes. Turbo says he needs Lee's maps, which, of course, we've just had a quick look at. So let's see where he goes. He says he goes up this, mounting a hill which perches you over the valley of the Ada, giving you a sweeping prospect of the flat river, fields, and the downs. It's got to be on the top. It wanders on quietly, an old road over the hill to St. Botolph's. Well, surely he's just on the lane, isn't he? That goes to those people that know. I apologise for those people who don't know the area. None of this makes any sense, and I appreciate that my quizzical meanderings here as I ponder where he's going must seem a bit dull and boring. But for those of us who are familiar with the geography of the area, it is quite fascinating how he describes it. Now, St. Botolph's is this beautiful old church, and I've made a video there as well, many of them, is a small old church, here we go, like the one at Coombs, standing in the fields with no apparent supporting community. Well, there was, only the community has since gone. It's one of those disappearing villages, deserted villages. The beautiful little church is satisfactorily simple inside. And that's true. It is very satisfactorily simple. It's a lovely church. I love Coombs. With its whitewashed walls, the 3 half pillars and arches inlaid curiously in the wall, and the perfect pulpit with a roof over it. Yes, so he's talking about the arches which formed a north aisle, and then the north aisle was taken away. And when they filled in the north aisle, they left the arches, which was bricked up. But there would have been an aisle in front of that. And the 17th century Jacobean pulpit with the roof made of oak is very lovely. Anyway, sorry, I'm interrupting with little snippets of knowledge that I know, and I'm, Lee, I'm sure, and Lyndon all know all this stuff anyway. If it has no congregation, it at least gives a moment's rest to the passer-by. But perhaps more travellers are stimulated by the amusing freak garden next door to the church. It is a garden made of tableau, such as 3 plaster kittens and some flowers in an old boot to illustrate. There was an old lady who lived in a shoe. Hundreds of such tableaux, cows jumping over the moon, little plaster windmills, or the old English well mixed up with flowers and rock plants, and each with an appropriate rhyme. I don't think they're there now. A garden that amuses you as you pass, but would certainly drive you stark staring mad if you had to live with it. Yeah, probably true. This quiet place of road by the Ada and between the hills emerges to the northern side of the Downs at Stenning. And so strong is the almighty serenity and peace of it that the historical Stenning seems a roaring metropolis. It was pleasant enough to walk among the bright shops in the old houses that line the curving street going over the hill, but from the showman's point of view, it was too narrow in the street and too brisk in the traffic. If one had the time to stay there, maybe a discoverable soul in Stenning, and behind the smart garages or the restored hotels and the elegant tea shops. Sorry, I've read that wrong. If one had time to stay, there may be a discoverable soul in Stenning, and behind the smart garages, the restored hotels and the elegant tea shops, many local and very deep-seated virtues may survive. But I moved on eastwards, hoping for a more fitting stage for my affairs. My God, man, you've gone to Stenning in 1920 or whenever it is, 1930, and you're not impressed? Heavens, what you would think of Stenning now. Yes, it's hustle and bustle now, but it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been quite. I suppose with the old motor car chugging through. You can just imagine the sort of. I keep wanting to say Geraldine, but it's not Geraldine. You know the London. What was the name of the old? Not Geraldine, but you know what I'm thinking of. The London to Brighton race with Kenneth Moore, not Geraldine, but the name of the vehicle, what was it? I mean, it was a 1940s video, but, oh, God. Genevieve. God, the brain was clanking there, positively clanking. Genevieve. You can imagine some of those trundling through. Yes, thank you, Jackie Trainer. Genevieve, yes, I got there in the end. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Yes, where are we? Yes, he positively doesn't want any work whatsoever. Let's have a look at some of the comments out there. The executive producer is there. Hello to you, Rachel McIntyre. I have mixed views, she says. Ed, shame to see the community places go adrift, but many of them were often rather grim and outdated. Alan Sander says, indoors must have a job to pay the bills. You could find... Oh, yes, that's it. We're going to... I envy that scarf. It's like a mini blanket. It is very nice, and it was very kindly donated by the wonderful Fran from Floating Our Boat, Rich and Flan, they're a lovely couple. One of them's edible, you know. Michael White says, your snippets all add to the story, Richard. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Lee Lawson says, a historian friend of mine once lived in an old cottage at Botolph's, and she dug up Saxon beads in the garden. Oh, how envious I am to be... to have a place in which you could dig up Saxon beads, and even more envious that you could know that when you dug them up they were Saxon beads and not some old tat from the range or something. Absolutely. Genevieve, yes, we've got that. Andrew Norris, hello to you, Andrew Norris. Nice to see you, Diana. Rolf, hello to you. Hello to everybody who I haven't said hello to, by the way. I seem steam from your... Do you see steam from my ears? I'm not at all surprised. Right, okay. Bramber. Oh, we're on to Bramber. How exciting. Bramber, equally ancient and picturesque, was even more narrow. That's true. And better supplied with charabancs. The old cottages are still there, surprisingly well preserved for so busy a road, but they are a little obscured by the numerous advertisement of teas. 5 perky boards to 1 small cottage ought to be a punishable offence, and as the gardens and the castle ruins are all shouted up too, I could not find the courage to add to the confusion and clamour for pennies. No, you're work shy. He's work shy, this dude. Sussex was beginning to have its difficulties for the modest show business. There were, in fact, 2 entirely different worlds in the county. There was this modern development along its main roads, the moving community of motorists, and the catchpenny business attendant upon it, in which the show had no place. And in between the network of roads were the islands of agricultural life, surprisingly quiet and retired, and often so scattered or small that a passing show would be unable to collect an audience. An awkward alternation which made me horribly splenetic. There's a word you don't read very often. Splenetic. Can anyone tell me what that means? S-P-L-E-N-E-T-I-C, splenetic. And an awkward alteration which made me horribly splenetic and evolve passionately fantastic schemes for organising... Sorry, I've read that badly. Still want to know what splenetic means. An awkward I'll get through this if it kills me. An awkward alternation which made me horribly splenetic and evolve passionate, fantastic schemes for an organisation of the world more suited to the needs of Punch and Judy men. Has anyone got it? Has anyone got what that means? Splenetic. You have to go back and do a video about St. Margaret's in Bramber now that it's open. Oh, St. Margaret's the church. Yes, I did... I think, isn't in St. Margaret's the church, as if there was another St. Margaret's, the grave of the... the smuggler. The smuggler. Can't remember his name. Cowper, is it? Nigel, where's Nigel Sadler when you want him? Nigel knows all about him. Isn't he buried in there? Spleen. Angry, perhaps. Oh, yes, spleen. Is it spleen? Where is it? I've lost it. I read it. Splenetic. Oh, is it? Yes, spleenet. Is it spleen? Yes, it's not double E, though. Anyway, is it in the dictionary? Oh, it means bad-tempered and spiteful. Oh, yes. An awkward alteration which made me horribly splenetic and angry, and involved passionate, fantastic schemes for the organisation of the world more suited to the needs of a Punch and Judy man. Absolutely. After Beeding, when the road turns away from Brighton and goes into the heart of the country, it is considerably better behaved. You are among the fields and down sides again, and you can sit in the shade of a flowering elderberry bush and get one of those open views of rural Sussex and see, over the River Ada, the chef d'oeuvre of the county, the steep rampart of the downs rising from the trees of the plain. Again, you are in the spacious country, supported by the generous and the lovely life that comes from the gods and not from the vulgar inventions of fortune hunters. All the picture of plain and hill beneath the sky, and the gracious harmony of colour and sound, all the beauty of earth, which man has turned his back on because it does not pay, is there to exhibit its charms, without any tortured theories of art, without any price of admission. This man, Walter Wilkinson, is a poet and a writer, more than a Punch and Judy man. He should have abandoned his puppets and just stuck to wandering the countryside describing it, because he does it so well and so beautifully, and it's so engaging to read and hopefully to listen. And it's so descriptive, and just his turns of phrases are marvellous. I just wish he'd not wasted time with the Punch and Judy as much as I'm a performer myself, because because I would love to read volume after volume of his books, and there's only a few of them, which is a shame. Linda Kane says, "Are we lost today?" No, we're not. Well, we've got to Beeding. He's gone through. You go through. He went through Bramber, the village of Bramber. As he goes through that, probably went past the Pipe Museum. Didn't go and visit the Pipe Museum. It's no longer there, is it? And then he's carried on eastwards through Bramber, gone over the bridge, presumably past the Bridge Pub Hotel, but he's not gone in there for a Swifty. And I wonder if he's just come up to where the garage is and the little roundabout. And where is he going to go? But he says he's gone into the hills. So maybe he's turned on the east side of the River Ada. I'm assuming that he's done that. And maybe he's gone into the Saltings. He may have gone into the Saltings there. Even the Punch and Judy show found its place without effort, in a natural, spontaneous way. Oh, here we go. No, he's not done that. He's not done that. As I pushed the barrow into the village of Small Dole, so now we know where he is. What's the name of the pub there? Julia and I had a lovely meal at the pub. The little pub, after we'd been into Tottington Wood. What is the pub? We had a lovely meal outside in the sun. It was a glorious day. We enjoyed it very much. As I pushed the barrow into the village of Small Dole, the school children were playing in the playground. Oh, I think the little old school, I think they still play in that playground, don't they? If I remember rightly, the chirps of the children came to us fairly recently when it's quite near the car park. Is it? It's quite near the car park just before you get to Tottington Wood. And then you've got there's that skateboarding thing. Julia will know. Six Bells. Yes, the Six Bells. There we are. Was it the Six Bells or the Rising Sun? Six Bells, I think it was. Oh, here was Nigel Sadler has turned up. Cowison was shot dead just a few hundred yards from Richard's house in 1832. Wasn't me. I'm putting my hands up. Wasn't me. And yes, William Cowison, that was his name, is our smuggling man buried at Stenning. Thank you very much. What page, please? Any ideas? What page? Page 155. It was the Fox Pub. Wait a minute. The Fox Pub. Make your mind up, Julia. Make your mind up. Lost my space now. Lost my space. Again, you're in spacious country, yes. Wait a minute. Small Dole. The children were playing in the playground, immediately rushed to the railings, and with ready interest in something unusual and extraordinary. "Come and look at this funny man," they shouted. "What has he got on that funny barrow? What is it? What is he? Is he selling something? No, it's Punch and Judy." "A Punch and Judy? Hi, give us a show, mister. Give us a show." "Stop and give us a turn, mister. We want to see it." Two boys ran out of the playground and came up to me. "If you please, sir, would you show us Punch and Judy?" "Do you think I could bring it to the school?"
Oh, yes, sir. If you ask the teacher, she'll let you. We sometimes have a conjurer. He comes in the playground.
As I walked to the gate, the mistress came out, sent the two boys back within bounds, and said that she was afraid that I had come to complain of their rudeness. Had they been rude to me? On the contrary, I had been very impressed by their politeness and the clever way in which the two urchins had employed their savoir-faire, and how they had made themselves an orderly and impressive deputation to represent the clamorous crowd behind the railings. We will not have any rudeness," said the mistress. "We can all be well behaved, whatever else we are. I will not tolerate rudeness." From politeness to politeness, the arrangements for a performance merged. The mistress thought that her small school would be beneath my notice, but I wanted to show the children who had been clever enough to ask for it. She said that they were very few in number and that it would not be worth my while. But who was I asked, that I should worry about being worth while? The children would love it, she said. Oh, the children would love it, she said, but only a few of them would have the pennies with them. Well, I have a soul above pennies, and if 6 of them were missing, that should not stand between the children and their bit of fun. "I will pay you," she said in an inspired moment, "and the children can pay me tomorrow." She's like 1 minute, I will pay them. Oh, what a generous teacher. Yes, and the children can pay me tomorrow. What a mean-spirited teacher. "We shall finish our lesson at 4. You can come back into the playground and set up whenever you like." The playground was delightfully mixed up with the village. There was a field at the back, and to one side a large kitchen garden in which a whiskered old gentleman was working. He began to work in that part of the garden which commanded a view of the theatre, and asked with anxious interest at what time I intended to begin. The mistress invited him into the playground, and he returned the compliment by offering her a picking of beans any night in the week she cared to have them. The performance was distinctly approved of by the children, and I think that they would have been content to sit before the show for the rest of the evening. One of the bold boys, who had risked his good conduct reputation by stepping out with the invitation to the show, remained to help with the packing. He also suggested that I interview Mrs. Bones, who allowed travellers to camp in her field behind the school. Mrs. Bones, very old and brown, but gay and youthful, had received a full amount of the show from her granddaughter, evidently so favourably that the field was put at my disposal, and hot water too, if I wanted it. By this time, several boys had attached themselves to the barrow, and they had pulled it into the field, helped in the erection of the tent, and remarked favourably upon its appointments. But when tea was ready, they withdrew politely, in spite of my protest, to leave me to a solitary chewing. I wonder where Winifred is, his wife. She seems to have vanished. Sorry, I just need to twiddle my eye. It's my fake eye. For those that don't realise, I have a false eye. I don't have a pair of falses. I just have the singular one. What do we got here? Nigel Sadler, yes, done on that. Carrison was that. Executive producer says, I've been trying to follow on a paper map here, but I can't work it out. Oh, very easy, very easy. They're in Small Dole, and they're clearly just up, I think, just south of the pub. There is some old building, if I remember right. I mean, I haven't got the map in front of me, so my memory is a bit vague. But there's some old building there, which I think was the school. Because when Julia and I were there, I'm sure we heard school children playing. Six Bells, Rising Sun, whatever it was. It was the Fox and Hounds in 1900, says Nigel Sadler. You're looking at the OS map, of course. Edward Moulding says it could be the Fox and Hounds. Hey, Julia said the Fox, didn't you? The Fox pub. Well done, Julia. My first suggestion was unctuated as a question. The second was a statement. Definitely the Fox. Ah, yes. Well done. Punctuated. Oh, punctuated as a question. Oh, yes, you did say, yes, the Six Bells question mark. I'm so sorry. I've only got the one eye, using my usual excuse. Nigel Sadler, 1900 OS map, says the Fox and Hounds. Brilliant. Julia's a genius. Michael White says punctuated. There we are. Punk you hated. Yes, I'm not into the punks. Lee Lawson says, I was thinking you meant the pub at the T-junction with the Henfield Road, which is the Rising Sun. Oh, yes, I know what you mean. I know where that is. Ouch, looks like the false eye is on the blink, Richard. Yes, I need to go and have the false eye given a buff up. It needs a good polishing. Supposed to go once every year to have it polished. I haven't been for about 10 years. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. I hate going to London. It's so bloody expensive. And it's so full of people. Not so much now. I probably could go there, but you'd have to wear a mask. Oh, I saw a woman the other day. I was driving over to see the lovely Julia, and we went out to wherever we went to not Storrington, the other place, the place near you, Julia. What's it called? Shoreham. And on the way to you, on the corner by Lancing Roundabout, on the seafront there, a woman had a hat pulled right down here like this, big fur hat with a brim thing, furry brim thing, in a sort of fox colour, with a furry thing around there, and a mask up to here, for a COVID mask up to there. And I just thought, she does now look like Dick Turpin on the highway at the junction. And it was a bit like, stand and deliver your money or your life. I thought you won't get much out of me. Not when I bought my van, anyway. Yes, so anyway, Mrs. Bones. Did we read much about Mrs. Bones? Mrs. Bones, very old and brown, but gay and youthful. Oh, yes, we had all that, and it left him to his chewing. That's right. Excuse me. In 4.5 minutes, they had returned. These are the kids, presumably. In that time, their own tea had been dispatched. You can imagine kids doing that. They just rammed it down their throat. All but the last mouthful, which was in a state of being dispatched. Together with this rapid attack on the tea, they had hit on the idea that I ought to give a performance to the village at large, to their parents, who would soon be home from work, and who would welcome the performance and would reward me with sixpences instead of pennies. I was reluctant. One performance, together with tramping, camping and cooking and all the rest of it, was sufficient exertion for one day. Blimey. But the boys were very determined. They cited the experience of a certain man who lived in Small Dole with a trumpet. He had trumpeted his way over 50 miles for 10pence. But after playing his way through the village, he had collected 10 bob. What did I think of that? Wouldn't I like to collect 10 bob? Besides, the boys, who were desperately frank, were very anxious to see more of the show themselves. They were interested in no other questions. They were interested in no other question. Their spirits were depressed and offended by my refusal. And before such disapprobation, I ceased to be happy. How could I spend the remainder of the evening within the village precincts and sleep the night peacefully away while such gloom prevailed? The boys had their way. The show was erected again on a piece of green under an oak tree for a second performance. The parents didn't seem so enthusiastic as the children had predicted, but a good few, gathered round, and, like the trumpeter, I did collect about 10 bob. And that is the end of that chapter, ladies and gentlemen. I've taken a bit of time to get through that chapter, and sorry about that. I'm fearful now of starting the next chapter, but we could... Oh, yes, the next chapter is only a few pages, so we could do that if you're up for it. A bit dangerous going to London at the moment. Yes, I wouldn't be going there, I can tell you. Just send it up, the special delivery. Include a stamped address envelope. It all should be well. If you think I am sending my one and only prosthetic eye up to London, you've got another think coming, Linda Kane. Goodness gracious, without that eye, I wouldn't be able to see straight. Michael White says, perhaps an eye patch would make you look more roguish. The smuggler explorer. Yes, it certainly does make me look roguish. Don't do them poor puppets ever get a rest, Ed Loud says. Yes, they've had a rest. They've barely been out the box. This is chapter 14. Ed Burton hath our praise. Now, I never quite know how you pronounce Ed Burton. Somebody did say it was like Ed Burton, and somebody else told me it was Edburton. So I don't know. The downs, rising gently and reposefully over the fields, looked very attractive from Small Dole, and I was filled with regret at the thought of passing away from them. There was a road which turned off to Fulking and Poynings, but after the restlessness of Bramber and Stenning, and being so near Brighton, the thought of many charabancs, teas, and tourists had come to mind. And besides that the road led off with a little sharp hill, the sight of which the evening before had made my legs feel very weak, and the barrow very heavy, and so, taking the line of least resistance, I had followed the level road to Small Dole. But now I was ashamed of the weakness. I was seized with a fury of jealousy to think that someone might be enjoying the calm serenity of the hills, while I was fuming and fretting with the dirty and noisy roads. Where's his wife? He's lost his wife, probably over in that... Did he lose his wife at Worthing in the rain before he got there? Winifred has not had a peep. She's disappeared. He's killed her. He's dug a hole. He's put her in the miller's tomb. That's what he's done, that we don't know what's happened to Winifred. Goodness sake. I was seized with the fury of jealousy to think that someone might be enjoying the calm serenity of the hills while I was fuming and fretting with the dirty and noisy roads. The clean, pretty downs had a clear call for me that morning, and I retraced the way to the corner, trudged heroically up the hill, and found this second road at the foot of the hills that was all... And found this secondary road at the foot of the hills all that was desirable. It was found the secondary road at the foot of the hills all that was desirable. It was confoundedly hilly, but the labour of mounting the inclines lifted one above the vast flat scene over the Weald. It is steep where he's going, and on the other side of the road only a low bank separated the road from the chalky fields. Half-civilised land curving up into the hills, those steep sides rose against the sky with thrilling proximity. As he gets to Edburton, he's going to pass that salmon place, isn't he? The salmon smoking place. I don't suppose it's smoking there. But I skirted the bottom of that when I was doing a video, came down the hill and skirted round there because that's a spring, a natural spring down there, and you can't get to it because they fenced it off. But I skirted round there to try and get down to it, and you can't quite. And I did actually go through the barbed wire there to see if I could get right down to the actual spring, but I couldn't. On the other side, you could see that the cattle got down there and must have sampled the water, I'm assuming. On that road it was a matter of taking a long time to travel a small way. Yes, I know that. And when I came to a man sitting on the wall of a cottage garden, it was not difficult to see that he also was enjoying his surroundings, that he was loath to leave the country of green hills poised against a blue sky and the long view over Sussex. "You ought to camp here," he said. "I always think it's the most beautiful and restful place anywhere about." And where is it?" I had to ask him. "Edberton," he said. "There it is, church and everything." He waved his hand vaguely over the minute hamlet of 3 or 4 cottages under the elms, the grey church among the trees on a hillock, and the overhanging of it all, and overhanging it all, the steep downs. I entirely agreed with him. I would camp there. "Leave your barrow and come and have a look at the church," he said. "You can leave your barrow, no one will touch it here." A remark deeply significant of the virtuous calm pervading this corner of the world. In the hot sun, we walked up the hill between the hedges and turned up the path to the church. I know that path, been up it. The rectory lay behind the church, and to one side was a large farmyard, a pleasant affair of stacks and barns and flint pigeonry. Further along, isn't it? Further along there is a dovecot. Is that what he means? "Look," said my mesmeric companion. "Look at this." He pointed to a stone in the wall of the church porch on which were scores of 2 circles marked with divisions and with a metal peg standing out from the centre. "A mass clock," he said. "There's another, and there's probably one on the other side of the church, probably Saxon and about 1,000 years old." "Saxon? Is this a Saxon church, then?" "Edberton means Edburgher's town. There was a Saxon church here, built by Princess Edburgha, but this church is later, built about AD 1200, and the stones of the old church were used for it. That's how these little sundials have got in. The one round the other side of the church never gets any sun. It's upside down and has been cut to fit with the other stones. These divisions mark the time of the masses instead of the hours. The church bells would ring and let the countryside know when it was time to get up and say their prayers. Though what happened on the days when there was no sun, well, who knows? And they couldn't tell the time. I don't know. Perhaps the farmer had a good excuse for not getting up. Perhaps they could get up early then, and as they can now, without the help of the church. I expect some of the old sows would start grunting in the dawn and wake 'em up." "And were there no birds in England 1,000 years ago to sing the sunrise?" "I expect there were the fowls of the air and the crowing cocks in the farmyards. Anyway, the people got warning to say their prayers on the fine mornings." Inside the church was handsomely plain. Just trying to remember if I could get in the church when I did that filming for In Search of Sussex, following old what's his name's book that I must come back to at some point. And inside the church was handsomely plain and large for so inhabited a district. Yes, it is a large church. My learned friend said that there had been a larger country population at the time of the building, and probably some ironworks in the district. He pointed out the Norman leaded font, which had been put outside the church and used as a horse trough by the Cromwellian soldiers. He pointed out a number of things until I began to admire his erudition, almost more than that of the church. But when he was gone, I discovered that he had gleaned all his information from a leaflet written by the rector and attainable by anyone. I left the aged church and walked I left the aged church, and after walking with the Normans and the Princess Egberga over 1,000 years ago, it was quite a shock to come back to the barrow and to begin setting up the natty modern little tent. The day was yet young, and hauling the show into Fulking up the hill by an old inn, the old inn being... Oh, I've had many a meal there. What's the name of the inn at Fulking? Oh, come on, Vobes. What's the name of the inn at Fulking? The dog and... Not the dog and duck, what is the inn? The inn at Fulking. So famous, so well known. So why don't I know it? I can't... What is it called? The dog and not the dog and partridge. The pig and whippet? No, not the pig and whippet. The icing on the cake? No, not the icing on the cake. What the hell is that pub called? Anyway. The Shepherd and Dog! The Shepherd and Dog. I knew it was something like the pig and whippet. I knew it was the Shepherd and Dog. Of course it was. Oh, yes, that's it. Oh, fantastic. Well done, Linda Kane. Ding, ding! Absolutely brilliant. Yes, a very old inn. Yes, I'm surprised he didn't mention... past the fountain. Yes, of course, I've stood on that fountain. Fed by the famous Fulking Spring and erected in honour of John Ruskin. All true. I was able to gather a small audience in a tiny place. Blimey. And having done my duty, I went back to Edberton, to the camp under the elms, behind the timbered cottages at the very foot of the precipitous hills. Gracious. Under the camp. Oh, to camp. Above where he is the remains, or the hill, the earth movements, the earthworks of a Norman castle is up there. It would have been a timber castle. I made a video about it. Of course I did. The sun blazed down ardently on hill, on meadowland and cornland, and Winifred returned to grace our summer days. We didn't know she'd gone. She's managed to claw her way out of the tomb, and to loiter among these quiet hills in which Princess Egberga might have stepped in broidered silken gown. So what did Winifred do? Did she get on a bus and get there? Or did he leave her, a woman, to walk from Worthing? I mean, what are we talking about there? About 6-7 miles? Good gracious. How near the old times seemed in company with that ancient church, the unchanging hills, the eternal sun and sky, and the same winds which fanned the passing generations of country people, and how ephemeral and what an ant man seemed to be. In these fields the people had come and gone. They had reaped their crops and raised their little houses. The ingenious church was but a molehill, a little heap of stones raised on the eternal hills, and all the great forces which sustained the corn, the grass, and the trees, and moved the clouds across the sky, were still there to dominate the way of life, to seize little men and carry them away on waves of living and moving loveliness. The heart of the sun drove us from the sheltered field, and we mounted the downside, steep and slippery, fragrant with masses of thyme, and bright with golden trefoil. A narrow, you'd be lucky. Actually, you probably would still find those there. It's not been, I don't think that's been farmed other than by cattle. A narrow chalky path on a high ridge led us round a coombe which fell away precipitously to a far below copse of elderberry and wild rose. Here the breeze began, and we sat on a ridge like two flies to watch the minute rabbits run in and out of the bushes, to look down into the farmyard, and to see the great stretch of hazy, dreamy weald beginning to disclose its details of field and forest. I wonder if that's the bit that I was talking about, where he looks down with the elderberry and the wild rose. We moved higher up the down and more into the wind. We rounded the obstinate crest and stood in the refreshing blast from the sea. Instead of the steep downside brushing our noses, the whole world was opened up before us, and we looked out over a panorama of downs to the sea and a misty infinity. And we still walked in eternal times, and we were the only inhabitants of a vast world of landscape, of sun-drenched fields and woods, of a line of green hills under a radiant sky. The only sound was the wind in our ears, and the only movement was the swaying of the near grasses and flowers. We turned along the grassy ridge, the high breezy track where the quiet sheep shake their bells, and where, in the grass-grown barrows, sleep the ancient chieftains. Yes, well, the ancient chieftains, unfortunately, have probably had their bloody tumuli ploughed over since then. Over the turf, and up and down the undulations of Falking Hill, we wandered, with a view down the valleys to the sea on one hand, and on the other we peered down into farmyards and looked down on the gliding roofs of cars and omnibuses as they passed along the road between the house roofs of Falking. Nearly finished. On this broad back of grassy hills, lifted above the wide world on either side, we tramped in the sun and the breeze, in company with all things eternal, inhabitants of any age, children of nature and timelessness, or at least we felt so until we came to the Devil's Dyke and the Dyke Hotel. Here, the aged turf of the old hill was sprinkled with little strange figures. Large shining chariots stood by the road, while the owners, in new and neat clothing, divided their attention between the immense view and the small dabs of ice cream. There were neat little men sitting at tables drinking neatly bottled beer. Sharply creased trousers were placed carefully side by side under the tables, and spotless shoes seemed to stand out without touching the gravel. Hats, oh, what an immaculate hats, straight from the shop window. It was a curious sensation to us, walking out of the eternal, to find so many people taking the present age seriously. The townish figures stood out and away from the gentle grass, hard and mechanical in their form, holding themselves proudly and circumspectly within their neat limits, while the glorious sun blazed immoderately over the whole earth, seeking navy blue suits that might turn them into purple, searching out pale complexions to burn them to a red brick, embracing glossy shoes to dry them and crack them and make them one with the earth. Oh, vulgar sun, that would interfere so coarsely with the best lines to be found in the Oxford Street shops. All the figures conformed to something. They were cast in the same mould, and to form and the form was strangely alien to the surface, not to mention the soul, of the Sussex Downs. We conformed to the extent of ice cream, wandered around the hilltop. Terrified, and found some happy, untidy figures playing at cricket. But before we were snatched up by a bus, or the spirit of the age, we wandered off back again to the modest, retiring Edberton. The sun went down with a purple and gold, and a pale, delicate moon became evident in the darkening sky. The silence grew profound, the calm, serene silence of the aged hills, yielding up the glamour of the day to the falling night. The hills deepened into vague but luminous impressions of colourless colour. their outlines cutting sharply and dramatically against the luminous sky, still glowing with the sanctity of the fine day, and yet radiantly silvered by the brightening moon. Silence, more and more profound, stillness complete. With the glimmering stars, the night had come down with beauty and perfection, and a great cool repose settled on the ancient Edberton sleeping beneath the dark elms and the great shadowy hills, plainly there, but elusive in the ghostly moonlight. And that endeth that chapter, and we're on chapter 15, Sunlight in Sussex, which we will leave for tomorrow. And we may, if we are very lucky, I think, finish the book on a Friday, which is perfect. What a beautiful and amazing book. What a fantastic book to read. Absolutely love it. He, as Mike Stevens says, he certainly has an ear for poetic language, and it's so beautifully done. It's not up its bum, you know. It's not up its navel like so much poetry can be. It's so wonderfully put together. So yes, absolutely. Quickly go through these. The puppets. Is it the puppets killed her? Said Ed. Lee Lawson says Winnie probably had enough going on round in circles. Oh, I've just lost it. Circles, and went home on the train from Worthing. Yes, I dare say she did. Springs, yum. Shepherd and Dog, yes. The COVID arms. The COVID arms, yeah. Now dubbed the COVID arms, I'm sure. Linda and Lee are resident researchers. I've got it. Fantastic, says Julia. Linda Kane, I'm good at pubs generally. Yes, I bet you are, Linda. Executive producer says, thank goodness Winifred is resurrected. Yes, it's a miracle, says Linda. Walter was too busy walking circles in his barrow to worry about how far our Winnie had to walk along. Absolutely. I mean, she you know, probably had more sense and had the compass and said, well, I'll just meet you there, shall I? Because you'll be an age. She probably put herself up at an inn, had a good wash, and you know, had some good nosh, a wash, and a clean pair of tosh. I don't know if that's a thing. Turbo Stream says, yeah, she was in the pub. She was in the pub. So, a man after my own heart. And Michael White says his wife probably stayed in one place as she knew that he would be coming back that way. Remember, yes, exactly, just as I said. But remember, they'd had a soaking, hadn't they, on the hill. And she probably said, enough of this. I am going to stay in a guest house, which is probably what she did. And he just overwent of it. Diana Rolfe says it does seem romanticised. It does, but I think that's him through and through. And Lee Lawson says, perhaps she got the train to Stenning, a taxi to Fulking. I wonder how she knew where he would be. No mobile phones. Well, yes, I dare say the mobile phones on the Fulking escarpment would probably not work anyway. You can imagine yourself there, says Mike Stevens. Absolutely brilliant, and very enjoyable. Sorry I missed the majority of it, says Linda Kay. Not to worry. And Nigel says, think of how you would cross a stile or climb over a gate with it, let alone pass overgrown narrow footpaths. Well, we're talking in the 1930s. I don't think the stiles and all of that was there. Reading people like W.H. Hudson and other fellows about the Downs at that period, it's before that they were cut up and divided up by the farms to grow the crops. It was very much, from my understanding, it was very much more open, and you could wander wherever you like because, as he's mentioned and or alluded to, there were sheep and it was just pasture. So I don't think you had the stiles and things. You probably had the old footpaths, but I don't think you had the stiles. We've had, thanks to the war, when they've decided to do all this prairie farming and monoculture, is they don't want you trampling over the crops. So you've had everything delineated for you. So I don't think that was an issue. He certainly doesn't mention it. And I think he would have mentioned more gates and styles if that had been. I think he just has had that freedom to roam thing. So sad that we've lost the elms. Yes, they say that Sussex landscape doesn't look the same without their distinctive shape. Absolutely, that is terrible. Yes, and TurboStream says perhaps there were no styles in the 1930s. That's my contention anyway. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been, again, another joy. I love it. I think this book has been, along with The Search for Sussex by H.V. Morton, my two favourite books so far in the reading, and for the joy of it has just been so great. Thank you so much for joining me again, and thank you for coming, and thank you for watching. Do, if you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, give us a thumbs down, and it'll be a very sad day for me, having put in all this effort, if people put a thumbs down, but people do. People don't always like what I do, and I don't know what to do about that, really. Anyway, I will be back again tomorrow with more reading, and thank you for coming along, and I will catch up with you then. Till then, take care, look after yourselves. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Wrong button. This is the one I wanted.